all the genres, where do you know how many directions to focus in, where to really zero in? Is that kind of capturing the essence? Yeah.
So I come from, I'm a fiddle player, and I'm from Paducah, Kentucky. I'm like I ended up being on rap albums. I played on bluegrass albums, a bunch of different stuff, scoring for Frog and Toad. And so for me, I had, my dad was a tour bus driver for years. And I was obsessed with Bela Fleck. I was obsessed with Bela Fleck. And my dad drove for Bela Fleck. And my dad played Bela some of the music I had written. And Bela said, this guy's good. He just needs to have his own voice. Whatever that is, that's what he needs to have. And I really took that to heart. So my thought was, well, it doesn't matter if I'm playing bluegrass, Frog and Toad, for hip hop. How do I have the same voice that's me as a through line through kind of like all that? How do I do that? And so it's tough because it's like, it's like sort of this like wide gambit, but I've tried to kind of keep a unique sound, almost like, and it's almost always strings for me. That's what mine was. And so it was like, how do I add strings to something to make that my own? How do I say, oh, that's Mark Evitts on strings doing that? Whatever that is, And so I just tried to kind of find, a lot of times I'll if I'm figuring out it's like a reference song, I'll do, I'll break apart a reference song for whatever I'm working on. Doesn't matter what it is. And it's like, I just did something that was like a early 90s Philadelphia hip hop thing. And what I do is I break this sonically down and say like, okay, here's all these different elements that wouldn't necessarily be in bluegrass or be in, Frog and Toad. I break all those down and I say, okay, I'm going to reorganize this now. I know what these elements are. How do I add my touch to it to make this my own? Because in the end, it's like you could play Bach playing bluegrass instruments. You can do that. It all works, but it's just like your interpretation of that. So on the wide approach, that's what I do. I always try to find like a through line that kind of connects me to that. Oftentimes it's strings, sometimes it's not, but oftentimes it is. So if I'm doing like a 90s hip hop thing, I find a way to put like some kind of cool strings sound in there. So that's like my through line. As far as like narrowing, knowing when to narrow, I think it's just whatever the brief says. It's like if the brief says that they're wanting a 90s hip hop Philadelphia kind of thing, I do that, but then I find ways to incorporate myself into that.